Editors use basic After Effects presets. That is why most SaaS explainer videos look very average. But if you want to learn a high-ticket client, you need to master how to do this. That unique type-on effect, you can't do that with just standard After Effects presets. It requires specific expression and dual animator setup that most animators doesn't even know exist. So guys, in this tutorial, I'm gonna break down the first 7 seconds of this premium Zilious Style SaaS animation, from the Parallax UI layers to the text reveal. No plugins will be required, just After Effects power. So let's build it. I have this composition here that I want to start with. Feel free to use your own settings. So I'm going to add a new solid layer. So I'm just simply going to call this BG1 because there are a lot of BG right in this animation. So I'm going to set this and then make comp size and hit OK. So go to Effects and Presets and add Gradient Ramp. The colors to dark blue. Here also you can feel free to use your brand color. Let's add the type-on text effect. At this point, pay attention very carefully because the way the Zilious Style made that type-on effect is absolutely amazing and a little bit complex than the regular type-on effect. So pay attention and follow very carefully. So first, let's add a text. You can use the property panel to select your font style and font size. It doesn't really matter here. What really matters is to make sure the text is aligned to left on the paragraph. Make sure it is aligned to left or this effect will not work properly. So then you open the align window and align the layer to the center. To get that professional look type-on effect, so expand the text layer and add a scale property for the animator. So here we're going to set the scale value to 0. So what we're going to do here is to set our animation right from this point to this point. Then we're going to open the animator 1. We're going to open the range selector and then we're going to set a keyframe for the offset. We're going to set a keyframe for the offset right here. So I'll move the keyframe backward. We're going to set the offset value at that point to 100. That way we have our text typing on, but we can still see it scaling up. So we're going to fix that because we don't want it to gradually scale up. We just want it to appear like it is being text on. So the reason why we are using this scale property, it is because we want to be able to attach an object to this end point using an expression. So now let's go to the advanced. Then we change the smoothness to 0. That way we have everything appearing like it is being typed now instead of seeing that smooth scale. You see that? Before we do the rest of the effect, let's style this our animation. So we're going to hit U to reveal only the keyframes. So what we're going to do now is to scrub until we see that it is only still manually that is typed on. Then here we're going to create a keyframe. So we're going to move forward in time to about this point and then copy this keyframe we just created. Ctrl C and Ctrl V to paste it at this point. You can open this up just to create that pause in typing, because if you look at the Zilious Style, it has a pause before the animation pulls back. So we'll have this type in, pause, and then continue typing. So next, what we're going to do is to still expand the text layer. We're going to add an opacity animator. So we're going to add an opacity animator here. So now we're going to set the opacity to 20. Now let's animate the range selector for the opacity. A little bit of tips: if you are adding the animator, that is, if you are adding the opacity animator, so make sure none of this property is selected. That way it has its own animator 2. Otherwise, if this animator 1 is selected and you add the opacity, it is going to add it inside its property, but that is not what we want. In some cases that may work, but for this Zilious style it will not work. So make sure it has its own animator property, which is the animator 2 that you see right here. So we'll drop the opacity to 20. So we're going to expand the range selector. Then what we're going to do right here is to come to this point where all of that is we set this to 0. So we'll move the keyframe to this point. Then we just simply animate this to somewhere here. We don't have to complete the range selector to 180 is okay actually. So we're going to expand the advanced option and change the smoothness to 90 or 80 will do. That is because we want that smooth fading in between this. So what we're going to do now is to hit U to reveal only the keyframes for both animator. So we're going to come here. We're going to come to this second keyframe right here. So we're going to set or create a keyframe at that point. So we're going to go forward here, copy this keyframe like we did before, Ctrl C and Ctrl V to paste it right here. That also slow down the opacity filling. You can see that. Beautiful. Now let's attach that typing cursor. This is where it gets technical, so pay attention very carefully. So add a null object. Now on this null object, we're going to add a layer control. So go to effects and presets and then add a layer control. We're going to set the source to the text layer. Add a slider control. We're going to search for slider control from the effects and preset and then add it. On the FX control panel, we're going to name this slider to width. So we're going to expand the layer, this null layer, we're going to expand it on the timeline. So this is where we're going to add expression. So we're going to expand this effect. So on the width here, on the slider, we're going to alt click on this slider right here and we're going to type in this expression. So you can find the expression on the video description, then you follow it gradually. So we're going to type W is equal to, add an open bracket and close bracket, then we'll move our cursor in between the open bracket and close bracket. Then we're going to pick whip this to the layer control up right there. So we're going to pick whip it from here, pick it and link it with this layer control, and that is going to complete the expression. So what is this simply telling it is to take data from the layer control. This width is going to take data from the text layer. So we're going to add a semicolon, then hit enter on the next line, add square brackets. So inside the square bracket, we're going to add w.source rect at time, then add open bracket and close bracket, then you add dot width. Now we need the null object to follow the scaling of the text object. So what we're going to do is to hit P on the null object and then hit P on the text, and we're going to link the position of the text, that is this position. We're going to link the position of the null object to the text position. So we're going to pick with the position right like this. So you can see that it has taken the position for this. So here we're going to open and expand the position expression, because after we link it, there is an expression right here. So we're going to go here toward the end and add plus. Then we link it with the slider control. So we're going to link it right here with the slider control, which is the width. So now if we are typing, the null object follows it, and that is exactly what we want to keep this very professional. So now let's create the cursor right here. We're going to carry or use anything that we like. In your own case, it might be mouse pointer, whatever you want to use. Feel free at this point to use it. So I'm going to use a simple shape layer. So I'm just going to create something here, but make sure no layer is selected. Then we're going to create something here like this. So just feel free to modify this to whatever you want. So I'm going to change this layer color to white. In your own case, if it is this color, you can leave it. So now what we're going to do now is to make sure our cursor has finished typing, and we're going to move this shape layer to make sure it fits perfectly to the end here. Then we're going to make it a child of the null object. So we're going to just simply come here, expand this. We're going to just make it a child actually from here. Select this pick whip and link it with the null object. So now if we fit this back to preview, so if we are moving now, you can see the shape object following it as it types on. And this is exactly what the Zilious Style did. Very professional. Now to finish this up, this text type on effect, so we're going to go to the end of the animation where it's finished typing and create an opacity keyframe for the shape object right here. Hit T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity. So we're going to come back to this last keyframe right here and set a keyframe for the opacity. Actually move it backward slightly. Then here we're going to set the opacity. Sorry, I have been animating the null object, so we need to select the shape layer, hit T on the keyboard, then we create an opacity keyframe, move it slightly backward, then change the opacity to 0. So that means it finished typing. If it finished typing, the cursor disappears. You see how it is? So now there is one thing you can do here. It's either you repeat the same process for the second text layer, or what I will advise you do is to pre-compose what you have done. So we're going to pre-compose this, Ctrl+Shift+C to pre-compose everything. So we're going to call this type on 1. So make sure you move all attribute to the new composition. So all we're going to do now is to come to the project manager window right here, which is this one. We'll Ctrl+D to duplicate it. Then you just simply add it to the timeline and then change the text. So after changing the text, if you scrub through the timeline, this is what you got. So what I'm going to do is to create a null object to control this text layer, because as we animate and add other objects, we may run into problem of size and maybe aligning. So now let's have a control that we can easily use to control that in the future. So now let's add a null object. Just call it text control. Make sure you move its anchor point to its center. Then you align it also to the center using the align window. That way it fits perfectly to the center of the text. Then you select both text layer and pick whip the parenting to the null object. Now at this point, everything on our timeline need to be in 3D so that we have that parallax effect from now on. So toggle the timeline, then you make the layers 3D. So now that you have made the layer 3D, you're going to add a new camera. So we'll just leave it at 50 mm and then hit OK. So we're going to add a camera control, which is a null object. Make sure the camera control is also a 3D. You can rename it if you want to. So now we're going to make the camera a child of the null object, which is the camera controller here. So now we have absolute control for this. So now it is time to bring in the UI. So we're going to keep our timeline organized. So we're going to create a new folder and just simply name it UI. This is where we're going to keep all our UI graphics. In your own case, you can just ask your client, or you use the UI of the website you are animating for. So you just simply need to import it to this line. So navigate to where you have your UI files, drag and drop it into the UI folder on the project manager window. Then we're going to make each of these a composition. So we're going to select them individually, drag and drop it into the composition icon beneath the project manager window. I'm going to do this for each of these UI designs so that they will stand as a composition, so that I can modify them any way I want them to be later or now. After making composition from each of those layers, I'm going to go into it, clean things up. I'm going to use shape layer to create a rounded edges for those UI designs. Then I'm going to also trim some parts out to make sure everything is just tidy and clean. This step is optional, but if you add it to your SaaS animation, it makes everything look professional. So after you modified all the UI designs, drag and drop them into the timeline and place them randomly on the top and then on the bottom of the frame. You can do this any way you want it. This is actually very flexible. It all depends on how creative you are, and it all looks good actually no matter how you do this. So after placing them randomly, I also use the rectangle tool to mask some part out, creating that fade effect into the background. If you look at the Zilious Style, you see some couple of the interface not really sharp in some side. So that is how you can do this. Just mask them randomly and create and increase the feather of the mask. So after lining up all the UI design on the top and the bottom, select them, all of them on the timeline, select all the layer and make them 3D layer. This is because we need to offset them in Z axis. That way we can create that parallax movement when the camera pulls in. So now we're gonna go to the top view. So switch the panel to two views and then make sure one is the top view, then move them in Z axis, move some forward, then move some backward. You're going to randomly do this. It doesn't really matter what comes first or what doesn't. So just make sure you are creative with all of this. So now that we have everything arranged, so let's animate the camera movement. Now we're going to select the camera control right here and hit P on the keyboard to reveal the position property. So we're going to come here to about 2 seconds forward in time, just slightly after 2 seconds forward in time, and then create a keyframe. You can always adjust this, so do not worry about how it might look at that point. So now you come here to about 20 something frames. Just 22 frame is okay. So we're going to pull this on the Z axis. We're going to pull it until we see none of these UI designs. Still need to pull it. Beautiful. Now we don't see any of the UI design. Always make sure you select your keyframes control. That is, right click on it, go to keyframe assistant and then select easy ease. Always edit your speed graph for smoother and fluid movement. Now we're going to come here to the text at the bottom right here where we have this keyframe here. So we're going to come to this text right here. then we hit P on the keyboard and set a keyframe for the position. Then we're going to come here to the top where this first keyframe started. We can always adjust this to get the timing right. So now we're going to move it on the X axis until we find something like this. So also we're going to select the keyframes and easy ease and then edit the speed graph. So now let's preview what we have done. For some amateur, this is already looking good and it is okay, but for Zilious Style, they will always push it a little bit further to look more complex than what you are seeing right now. So now let's push it further. With the background was moving when the camera was pushing back, and some of the elements on the top were actually also moving. So now let's create movement for some of these things. Now you come here to this point where it finished relaxing. So we're going to select any of these elements. So if you select it, then we hit P on the keyboard. So now let's set a keyframe for that one. So we're going to move to this point and just pull this to the right. Hold down Shift so that it will be straight. So when you push it that way, then you easy ease the keyframes and also edit the speed graph for smoother motion. This is going to add complexity, that is, make it more professional. So if you preview now, you will see what I mean. You see that? So you can also extend some of that so that it will come a little bit sooner. Just offset it on the timeline to create a realistic looks that you want. You see that? So I'm going to also select another element, which is this one, and also create a movement for it. So you can just select some couple, not all actually. Hit P on the keyboard for this. So I'm going to also make it come a little bit earlier, then set a keyframe. Then I come here, we can pull back, so we can also move it to the left. So also easy is the keyframes. So I think I'm going to leave it like this for the purpose of this tutorial, but you can take your own step further and animate some of these elements. But if you look at it now, it is creating some movement. It's not just pulling back. So you can also pull these keyframes backwards so that it will happen a little bit late. Beautiful. So now let's add the animation for the background. So if you like, you can leave it like this, but I'm going to just show you what Zilious Style did there. There are a couple of ways you can do this. Some use expression to change the color, but we are just going to use layer stacking for the background. So I'm going to select the BG at the bottom, Ctrl D to duplicate it. So what I'm going to do is to remove the gradient ramp effect. So I'm just going to hit backspace. So now that layer is empty. You can see it on the preview. So I'm going to go to Effects and Preset and search for 4-ways color. So drag it and drop it into the timeline for this. And it is going to give you this. So first of all, we're going to hide that layer. So once we hide it, we'll be left with these layers here. So this color, so we're going to pick from that color. So first we're going to select these colors So now let's unhide the layer. So you see what we got. If you are not cool with this, you can move the color controls right here. That is the four-way colors. If you select each of these colors, you can move it around. You know, if you select the four-ways color effect on the project, that is on the FS and control, you can move this around. You see that? You can move this around to just create a different look. But if you ask me, I like the first look that I got, so I'll just undo this. I think I like what it is here, so it is not written on stone. So what you're going to do now is to hit T for this layer, this BG on the top. We're going to make it fade in smoothly. So let's set the timing of the fading. It happens when this was pulling back. So from here, I'm going to set a keyframe for the opacity. Then I'll just come forward a bit right here and set the opacity to 0. So this way, if you preview now, you see the background changing seamlessly without noticing. You see what happens there? That is what the Zilious style means, to get realistic and very professional animation for their SaaS videos. And that is how you can turn basic UI shots into a premium SaaS intro. That text expression we use is a game changer for your workflow. You can save it and then use it in every project you have. If you are serious about mastering this style, then you need to see how I handle the full same transition in my Zilios masterclass. It is showing on the screen right now. If you have questions about the expression I used today in this tutorial, you can drop the question in the comment below and I will do my best to help you out. So until I see you again on the next one, my name is SSB Otaro for Motion Digit Studios.